Hey, and welcome back to the Flow Show. I'm Joanna Turner, Intuitive Business Mentor, and I'm here today with the beautiful Hayley Hunter Hines. And we had the most wonderful conversation. She's a new friend of mine, but her name came up in my last interview I did with Janine Howard, and I just knew I had to have a conversation with her. I knew she had a piece of the puzzle for me, and she was gracious enough to jump on and do an interview. We talk about her story, how she started her beautiful spiritual journey, how she follows the nudges, and that led her pretty much directly to her now husband many years ago when she met him in Italy. So it's a great story. We also talk about the divine masculine and feminine dynamics, how that's helped her create this wonderful relationship. We also talk about how her travel and her beautiful retreats that she's led all over the world have really led her on an incredible journey as well. So we talk a bit about sacred geometry, portals, the rose line, and I'll let you get into the episode for the rest of it. I'll tell you a little bit more about Hayley before we get started. She is a trusted spiritual advisor and wise counsel for visionary leaders around the world, and is the founder of the Soul Sparkle Sanctuary and is a spiritual director of the Soul Sparkle Seminary, a leadership development program for women, and the Soul Sparkle Society. She is the creator of the Sacred Shakti Method certification and teacher training. She's an expert in transformational travel and has dedicated her life to helping others around the world ignite the spark and magic within, lighting them up from the inside out. She's a conduit of unconditional love and grace and is committed to leading a revolution of spiritual teachers and leaders who serve from the depths of their soul and spirit. Hayley is deeply connected to her community and believes in the power of a pure heart and open mind to make all things possible. And she certainly does. You can just feel it from her energy. And I really hope you enjoy this. As also, we are a new podcast. We really appreciate all subscribes, likes, shares, reviews, anything to help us get started. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Hey, and welcome back to the Flow Show. I am so happy to be here with my beautiful new friend, Hayley Hunter Hines. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Amazing. And you're joining us from Sardinia. I love that. Beautiful. So we are going to dive into your incredible story. I just interviewed the incredible Janine Howard. If you haven't heard that one, definitely go back and listen to the Empress Code to get some beautiful energy from that. And your name came up in that conversation, and I knew immediately that I wanted to speak to you and get you on the show. And we'd obviously connected before when you had a beautiful retreat space in Tuscany. And yeah, there's something Janine said that we're going to get to that just made me need to talk to you and connect with you. So here we are. So happy to be here. And I would love you to just give us a little bit of background about your journey and how you got into the work that you do now. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
So I think a lot of us that are doing this work have probably been doing it for lifetimes. But for me specifically in this one, I've probably been on this path for, I would say, a few decades now, but full-time sparkling since about 2016. And I quit my fancy corporate job and I put my things in storage and I started to travel. My big vision was to travel and speak and teach and hold really beautiful transformational retreats around the world. And so I finally, after years and years of planning and years and years of putting it off, I finally decided to give myself permission and go for it. And I went all the way in. And I started in Italy and did an event there with a friend, and then spent a week in Florence, and then did my first Soul Sparkle Paris in 2016. And I was just off to the races after that. And what was supposed to be about a 90-day adventure turned into what are we, about 7 years later? So it's definitely been one surprise after another, but it has most of the time really felt like a bit of a magic carpet ride. So it's been an extraordinary adventure. So that's really how the journey unfolded, was starting by just giving myself permission to make a big dream come true. And then it
I love,
just
I
accelerated
love.
from there.
Tell me, when you say permission, what do you think was actually stopping you behind that decision in the first place?
Well, I think, a lot of us have been raised to always do the responsible, dependable thing, right? You finish school, you go to college, you get married, you buy the house, you have the kid. Like, there's a certain trajectory that society puts on us, if we choose to accept it, right? And so, for me, I had found a lot of success in my corporate career. I made it all the way to the top of my industry. I would have had to either leave and start my own company, or, go off and, and do something completely different, which is what I ended up doing. So for me, I had experienced a lot of success, from that perspective, but I also felt like I was living almost a dual life, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
rock star in the boardroom, like doing all the things, negotiating $1 million deals, but then studying all these other different metaphysical things and yoga teacher trainings. And I'd been learning and teaching and training kind of behind the scenes. So I felt very disconnected almost, or almost like a contradiction. Like I could be one way by day and another way by night, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But I just remember I was in these huge meetings and I would be sitting there and I would already know what they were going to say, like it was a sales presentation or something. And I started to realize I knew what they were going to say before they said it. And I was like, okay, that's freaky. And that really start of my, like, wow, this is really interesting. My gifts were starting to come online more than I had realized before. And so, yeah, I just finally realized that I didn't want to live a dual life. And I really wanted to be able to find a way to be the fullest expression of myself, always, in all the ways, all the time. And so by permission, I think it was, wow, I'm really going to quit this super fancy job. I'm really going to leave this fancy corporate office. I'm going to walk away from everything and I'm going to begin again and do exactly what I want to do on my own terms, in my own way. So I think that's what it meant for me.
Oh, I love that. And um, I had a very similar journey, did the corporate thing, did pretty well at it. And yeah, everything in my body just wanted me to leave, except I didn't trust myself. I had to have an accident first it was really the catalyst for me
Mm-hmm.
eventually leaving. But I was studying alongside the corporate job and eventually left. But so I can really identify with that. How did you, I love that did anything happen? I love that you started noticing your your gifts and I suppose it's your intuition listening. Was there anything in particular, whether it was a modality or a teacher or anything like that, that you felt like really helped unlock that first time that you were sort of more aware of things?
So, I really like to learn things. Like, I'm a super freak about, I think one time I had like 47 certifications of things. So I don't know that it was specifically one thing. I think it was probably a culmination of time, right? So I've been studying and practicing yoga for a long time. I had already done 2, maybe 3 yoga teacher trainings,
Well,
certifications. I've done 3 total. So 3 separate 200-hour ones. So again, I'm kind of nerdy like that. I love all the things.
like,
Um, so I think it was more, I was already opening myself up to just different ways of living. And I think really what happened, and I think this happens for a lot of us, I finally made the transition from living my life from the rational, logical to the heart led, soul centered space. And
mm,
that really shifted everything for me. And because, I had always been taught, do the right thing, do the responsible thing. I was always a good girl, all that kind of thing, right? So it really was a shift for me to think, wow, I've made it this far in my career. I'm going to walk away from everything and put my stuff in storage and travel. Like, who does that? Right? Like, it was just a very, you know, at the time felt very, I'm doing air quotes for those that are listening, irresponsible. But I was like,
Yeah.
that's just the calling of my heart now. And that's how I'm going to lead my life from now on. And it has served me quite well ever since. It's kind of a crazy journey, but it always has unfolded beautifully. So I think that was the bigger shift, is that I stopped making things make sense and I let myself lead from my heart and my spirit and soul.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And yeah, I was getting visions of Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh yeah.
That journey is it's yeah, it was one of the big. I remember watching that movie with my best friend, and she looked at me and she was like, "Oh my God, that's you!" And I was like, "Yeah, I think it is." And so I resonate with
What?
that a lot as well. Not that you brought it up, but it felt like, so I was going to ask you about Italy, and so how did Italy become your first port of call?
So I have a dear friend that she does a lot of work in the like culinary genomics world, and my background is actually in nutrition and corporate wellness. So I spent 25 years in that industry. And so a lot of my teaching and a lot of the certifications that I did were in that realm first. And I did some work with her through one of the programs that she offers. And she just invited me to come and help co-facilitate and help her with that retreat that she was doing in Italy. And I already had my Paris retreat booked for a few weeks later. So I thought, well, that would be great. I'll just take a few weeks off. At first, it just was going to be a few weeks off. I'll go to Italy to do her event at the end of October. I'll spend a week in the space between, which ended up being Florence, which is where I met my now husband, and then a week in Paris. And I thought, well, that'd be a great little trip, you know? Well, then what happened is I was like, why would I come back? Why am I coming back? Why wouldn't I just stay? And it really just kind of all flowed from that one decision, that one choice point is what I call it, to say yes to that invitation, say yes to hosting my first Soul Sparkle Paris experience. And I mean, an incredible amount of magic unfolded from just that one decision. So
Oh
that's
my
how.
gosh, I love it. Would you please tell me the story about how you met your husband?
So I had traveled a little bit in college and done like the 1 month backpacking, all of that kind of thing. And I fell in love with Florence at the time. And I knew that I felt really safe here, felt really comfortable, and I just loved it. And I wanted to come back. And I hadn't been back in all of those years. And so when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go that week between the first event and my Paris event, I thought, well, what if I just go to Florence? You know, I love it there. I'm familiar with it. I'd love to just be there and sit in cafes and drink cappuccinos and like write my book and, you know, just the whole like thing. And so that's what I did. I flew direct from the southern part of Italy right to Florence. The next day, I was sitting in that I found the cutest little coffee shop that I could find. And I think I was on my probably fourth cappuccino, probably. And I just sitting there trying to, you know, put my book together and all this. And all of a sudden, have you ever had those moments when someone walks by you and you just like, there was just this whoosh, like feeling of
Mm.
energy. And what was that? Like, what just happened? And I could only see him from the back, but then he turned back and started coming from the bathroom out after a while. And I was like, oh my gosh, don't blush, don't blush, don't blush. You know, he was so cute. And so, long story short, I ended up going back to the front of the cafe and he was sitting there with a friend. And finally, the friend left. He comes over, tries to start speaking to me in Italian, which I don't understand. And then he switches to French. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I learn Spanish? You know, like I know some Spanish, but not even that much, right? And so we sit
Moment.
and translate. And we barely spoke the same language. And we did Google Translate for this crazy amount of time. And yeah, for some reason it just worked. And that was 7 years ago. I met him November 1st, 2016 in that little coffee shop.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love that. And the fact that there's that feeling, and then even with no common language, really
Yeah,
figured it out. So it was all more about the energy than anything it must have been.
it really was. It really was. And he loves American music. He's from Morocco and he's lived in Italy for about 20 or so years. But he grew up listening to American music. He didn't know what the words meant, but he loved the words and he knew the words. So he would like sing to me with American songs. And he'd be like, every now and then he'd be like, "Do you know Bob Dylan? I love Bob Dylan." Or, "Do you know Bon Jovi? Oh my gosh, I love just so we just connected with music and it just worked. And yeah, so we got married. We were apart for about 3 years because of COVID. And so but then I booked a one-way ticket last May 1st, May 2022, May 1st, as soon as they lifted all the requirements and things. And I flew back and we ended up getting married on 7/7/22.
Oh, congratulations. That's so wonderful. I love that. And I just
Fun.
love that you following your heart and your path literally took you directly to him.
Directly. Truly. It was like when you look back, right? I always think about breadcrumbs, how we always are given just little breadcrumbs, like do the next thing, go to the next place, and I tell people all the time that in my opinion, the best way to really meet, connect, collaborate, whether it be with your person, your beloved, or a new, business thing, whatever, is just to follow those nudges and follow those intuitive hits where you feel called to go. And if you feel like you're supposed to go into a shop, go into the shop, like do the thing where you're guided. And it's a way more fun way, I think, to do life and to meet people. So yeah, he's been an incredible blessing, and yeah, we just have the best time. So it's super, super fun.
Oh, I love that. And it's so much part of what I experienced in my journey as well. And at the time, like it doesn't necessarily make any sense because you don't know why you're going there or what's going to happen. And I love looking back, and really what I'm just sort of discovering as part of this show has become like joining those dots or the breadcrumbs going backwards to be like, oh, that's why, that's the magic. And really to help give other people the confidence to trust that calling, to take that step, to listen to that little voice or the nudge, right? Because it's so easy to dismiss it, right? Because you're in this beautiful high-flying career. You could have easily said, I'm going to wait till my next bonus comes through. I'm going to wait, just a couple more years for my 401k, right? You could have come up with a million reasons not to do it. And that, it takes courage, and it takes, and I was talking as well about how there can be you take a personal hit sometimes, right? Whether it's financially, you're losing your home, there's you're going to be away from your family and friends. Like there's so many parts to it that do sound crazy, but at the same time, like there's so much more out there. And yeah, I love that you did that. So let's talk a little bit about you run these incredible, magical, sparkly retreats all over the world. Can you tell us a little bit about the retreats you run, and then what's led you to run them in certain parts of the world? Because I feel like your intuition and going on these retreats is bringing the right people together in the right place at the right time. And I'd love to know more about that and how it's played out for you.
So essentially, I think at the root of it, I decided to create exactly what I wanted to experience for myself that didn't really feel like available at the time. And so, I love beautiful, sparkly, magical things. I love the perfect glass of champagne on a rooftop patio overlooking something gorgeous. I love deep spiritual conversations and connections, right? I love to talk about making your biggest dreams come true. Like, I'm kind of an odd duck in that way. Like, I can't do small talk. I can't talk about things that don't matter. If I do, I'm not very good at that. I'm a little awkward about it. And it is exhausting to me, right? So if I'm like, so how about the weather? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just feel like a big dork, you know? But tell me your biggest dream. I'll be like, great, this is how it's going to go. This is how we're going to do it. And in 27 minutes, we've got it mapped out start to finish. Like, that's really more my vibe and style. So traditional, like networky kind of things don't really work for me. I was always like weird at parties because I would know your whole entire life story while everyone else was doing whatever they were doing. And I was like, I don't care what you're talking about. I want to know everything about this one person, you know? So I just really crafted my business and life and events around that. And I'm not for everyone, but the ones that vibe with that really resonate with that energy. And I love to have beautiful experiences. I love incredible cuisine. So most of the events that I've created are in, as you said, places that I feel called. And usually I go because for some reason I'm supposed to be there. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, we're going to have to sparkle here. I think we need to sparkle here. And then I just invite people to the experience that I create. So I do definitely utilize those intuitive hits and the breadcrumbs to find the places. So most of the places that I've hosted my events are typically in Europe, just because most people would like to travel and come be with me somewhere in the world versus in the US. Not that I haven't done events there, but for me, my favorites are when it's a grand adventure and it's like getting you out of your comfort zone. And, I just had women that are 70 last week that have never traveled before.
Wow.
Like, they've never used their passport, and they used their passport the first time to come to Italy. Like, that's really cool to me,
Yeah.
women that have given themselves permission to do a big thing. Right. And so, I've done Paris several times. I even lived in Paris. You'll probably appreciate this story based on the previous conversation, is that, I ended up in Paris for about 6 months thinking it was going to be one thing, but it turned out to be this like deeply transformational, like Mary Magdalene work and Roseline work and all this kind of thing. So sometimes I think I'm going to be going to do a thing and it turns out to be a whole different experience. But that's where you just kind of, if you choose to do life this way, you choose it, and you just trust and surrender that whatever is unfolding is in the highest and best for you. So yeah, it's been pretty incredible. But Mallorca, Spain, the south of France, several times to do that work there with Mary Magdalene, Paris, Morocco. My husband's from Morocco, so now we're hosting. This is our first event last year in Morocco, which was one of my favorites. We're doing another one there because service is also a big part of my business and life. And we had an incredible project a few years ago with a women's cooperative in Nicaragua. And we ended up teaching them how to make jewelry, and we helped sell the collection and taught them all these different things, healthy eating and money management and all this. And we built 10 homes for them.
Wow.
Through the lift of my community and so many other beautiful humans that made that happen. But then once that political unrest really settled in Nicaragua, we needed to shift our focus to where we could take ladies to somewhere that would be safe, safe for them to go. So now we do kind of a service meet sparkle experience in Morocco and work with a women's group there as well. So that's really part of my passion too, which guides, where we go. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love your connection with him has taken you there as well. But I'd love to go back for a moment to Paris. And how did your experience start with Mary Magdalene and the Rose Line? I would love to know, how you became aware that there was something going on, that there was some sort of mission unfolding.
So it actually started with a 3-book series in 2015. Yeah, I read the trilogy. It was Kathleen McGowan. I don't know if you've read these books, but it's The Chosen One, The Book of Love, and The Expected One, The Book of Love, and The Poet Prince. The Expected One.
Okay. It's on
Oh
my,
my
I'm
gosh.
adding it to my list.
Tomorrow. You're going to read them all in one day. So that really opened up this starting point, if you will, right? And so that got me really interested in the whole thing. I was just like obsessed with it. And so let me take you back through the journey then. So I spent the week in Italy, the first week I left for my trip, a week in Florence, met my husband, went to Paris for the week. Then from there, with my best friend, we drove, we rented a car, and we did the road trip from Paris all the way down to the south of France, following the Rose Line all the way down. So we
Wow.
stopped at places, did all the things. It was just an absolutely incredible experience. And then after that, I was like, all right, this is my path. And I just continued to study and continue to be open. That's why, again, taking more groups back to Paris, and then also started to the south of France and doing all of the beautiful and sacred sites and spaces there with Mary Magdalene. Spent a lot of time there. We actually were thinking we might move there, but we ended up staying in Florence. But there's still a real beautiful connection to the south of France for me.
Yeah.
And so that's really how it started. Those books really lit the fire, and then going and experiencing it and really stopping and soaking in the energy, and going to the cave where she spent so much time at the end of her life, and seeing the remains. We went to the basilica where her remains are, and man, it's incredible, the energy and the love, right? The love that you feel when you're in there. So yeah, I don't know. Did I answer the question? I think I did, but I'm not sure.
Absolutely. I have a pool as well to the south of France. And it's hard to sort of people, why do you want to go there? I can't explain why, but there's something. I would love to live there one day. I don't know a single person, but that's also how I've lived my life and traveled, and I don't know why, but there's something about that area, and I've been specifically looking at all the different sites and where I'm supposed to be, in alignment with my astrocartology and all the things. And there's something.
I had the reading too before we moved to Sardinia. I was like, I just want to make sure this is on my line, and it absolutely is. So that's so funny.
Amazing.
You know what else? South of France, we're just south. So the south of France, right? And then you have Corsica Island, and then Sardinia is right underneath that. So it's all in the line.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And we mentioned, so I've worked quite a bit with the Rose Line as well, and a little bit with Mary Magdalene. I feel like I've got more of that to uncover. I have read some books about it. I had a friend that was really connected and into it, and but that was probably more before I really opened up to some of the magic. And it turns out that my sister lives very close to Roslin Chapel in just outside Edinburgh.
I've been there. Yeah.
Of course you have. Why have you been there, right? Like, what? It's not the first place that most Americans would have necessarily been, but I love that you've been there. And so I keep getting drawn back to there, and have done some grid work with the Rose Line starting there. So yeah, I've definitely been called there. So where did you, when you ran one of your retreats in Scotland, where did you go?
We were in Edinburgh, and we started there, went to the Roslin Chapel, and then we went out to a castle near Pitlochry, I think is the name of the town. It was actually a client that I was just helping. One of the things that I do is help women that have a dream of hosting an international retreat, or a retreat local for them, if it's their first one. So I kind of do some mentorship around that. And so I was helping support her event. And so, yeah, that's when we went with her.
Oh, wonderful. I love that you've been there, like specifically to that place, because I had this beautiful experience with my father actually in the crypt of Roslin Chapel of all places, and it really felt it felt very special to be there and to go back there regularly. I don't know if I mentioned to Janine, but my sister's son, who's now 5, his birthday is the summer solstice. And so we are invited back. My dad's birthday is the winter solstice. So, but we're invited back to their house often on his birthday, which is pretty much on the rose line for the solstice. So there's a sort of a certain alignment, I think, that happens that's so beyond us and our understanding of the timing and why I'm supposed to be somewhere and why, like, what is going on. I just have no clue sometimes, but it just feels really magical. And talking about Scotland, I had a bit of a rejection, I suppose, of my heritage in a way, like sort of dismissed it, wasn't very interested in it. It's almost one of my friends, I must get on, Rosie, we sort of talked about this sort of shame of being Scottish. I don't really, I wasn't particularly conscious of it, but there are some aspects that I would be embarrassed about or whatever. And so when I've been here for a couple of years now, and I was like, why am I here? Why am I here? And I didn't really understand why I was home, but I'm having this deeper awareness of an appreciation for my own culture and the heritage of Scotland and what I'm here for. And I feel like maybe I'm supposed to do a Scottish retreat of some sort. But I was in sort of this rejection of it because I thought, who would want to come here? And then I'm like, no, Scotland's cool. It's okay. People actually might want to come here, just because I haven't appreciated it for maybe for what it is, but I feel like there's an important piece of that puzzle somehow needs to be ticked off the list at some point. So we'll see if that is part of my journey, but it definitely keeps sort of coming back around again. So I would love to take us back to Italy, I think. And when Janine arrived at the end of just a couple of months ago, I think, or last month, you said to her, apparently, I've just opened a portal connecting the Rose Line and the Vesica Pisces. And I would love for you to just tell me about that. Talk me through it. How, why, and what made that come about?
Well, this is so fun because I haven't really told a lot of people, only the gals that, were at the retreat. So this is a fun conversation to share
to a wider audience. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's good. So again, for whatever reason, I was really drawn to a specific guy. I'm not even sure I can remember his name right now. Janine actually knows who it is. Anyway, he's written incredible books. You'll probably need to know him because he's written a lot of books, I think, too, that you'd be interested in. And he was doing something specific around sacred sites. He does a lot of research around sacred sites and so on and so forth. And he was doing this talk about how you can create your own sacred site or portal on your property and then connect it. And I just, all of a sudden I was like, massive, like, yes, you have to do this and you have to do it right now. So clear. And I was like, all right, okay. So he did a teaching on how to do it. So I studied that and I did some other research. And then, I make all my notes of what I need to get and all these bits and pieces and bops. And I tell my husband, I was like, okay, I need to go to these 3 different shops and blah, blah, blah to get all this stuff. He's like, well, what are you doing? It's like, oh, nothing. Just, doing a little thing out in the garden,
Don't mind.
How am I supposed to explain it to him? But English is his 4th language. So it's still like esoteric things are a little bit more challenging. But anyway, so I go and get all the things and it's a very, very clear process. And for the actual portal creation, right? So the Vesica Pisces was a separate download and a different message, but I'll explain that to you. So then basically it's a very specific procedure that you follow, and I can share it with you if you want.
Sure.
And so I wanted to do all of that. It's all based on sacred geometry. So you bring all the ley lines together, all the water lines together, and you find, I use a pendulum for pretty much everything.
Oh, me too.
So
I have it like right. Mine is like
here. Oh, you got yours? I'm like, yep, right here. So was doused and figured out where it needed to go on the property. And I knew that was the spot. I was like, okay, that's very clear. And then what you do is you're able to create something that supports the outcome that you want to have, or that you're called to create, right? So for me, I had also just received a message about the Vesica Pisces and how that's a huge part of the work that I'm here to do, and how the two circle. Let me see if we're not on video, we're on audio, so I'm going to try to show you this. But so this is the traditional one where it has the two circles, right? So this is a false teaching, and the true one has three.
Oh, interesting.
Okay? So it's divine masculine, divine feminine, and then our divine self, like the holy God self.
Ooh. Yeah.
Divine and holy inner child, whatever you're going to call it. But so the message that I had was, this is the portal that I needed to create.
Yeah.
And the shapes that it needs to look like. It's a 3-part. So I built that with also very specific crystals that the energy that you want to also call in and create. And so different crystals, as you know, have different properties. And so I did a very specific build of this sacred geometry 3-circle, and I had this pyramid in the middle, and it was just really cool to the point. And I left it there because then there you do an activation and initiation, which that is what really activates the lines from all the other sacred sites to bring those energies to that special place. Yeah. And so then it needed to stay there for a period of time. I did it right before the spring equinox. And my husband, bless his heart, he was like, honey, are you going to keep these rocks in the garden for ever? Do I need to mow around them, or are we going to pick them up at some point? I was like, just a few more days, honey. Just leave them there for a few more days. I'll give you the signal. So anywho, that in a nutshell is how that all came about. And so yeah, it's been fun to teach some other people how to do that, because really we can all do that. It's not a special wizard thing. It's a very specific technique, very very precise measurements that you need to do to make sure that you follow the right methodology. But yeah, so that's how that came about. Pretty fun, huh?
I would love to know exactly what you were doing, because I've had a few experiences. One, in my old office when I lived in Australia, there was a portal in my office, and I didn't create it. It just was there, and it was wild. The stuff that happened in my in my sessions with clients, and I'd have people take a step into my office and be like, what is even happening in there? And I was like, it just happened that way. So yeah, it was really intense. But the other thing is, I have this tattoo. I don't know if you can see it. And it's 3 circles. So it's the regular Vesica Pisces with a third, and it's not in the same place as yours was, but mine is in a row instead of in a triangle. And that was a code that was downloaded specifically for me by a friend, and then I've had it tattooed onto my body. But yeah, I didn't know anything about Vesica Pisces at all when I initially asked her to create the tattoo. Then it took me about a year to put it onto my body because it felt like a really big deal. And then so I had it, and then I was in Glastonbury in England, and I had a reading with this like a tarot guy called Michael, and Glastonbury is on the Michael line,
Yep, I've
the
been there.
St. Michael line.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so and it connects with the rose line. But when I was in the reading, he was like, "You need to do more work with sacred geometry." He said it's really important, and he said
Yep.
specifically you need to work with the Vesica Pisces. And I was like, "Oh, okay," and literally had to be like, "What's that?" And I think he drew me a little thing and said, "This is what it is. You need to investigate." And so I said, "Oh, like this thing on my arm." And he was like, "Oh my God, how have you got this on your arm?" And I was like, "I have no idea." So I was very clueless, very naive, but had this thing. And then in this experience in Glastonbury, it felt like I was in an unfolding Matrix Celestine prophecy moment. And I was walking up the street to go meet somebody for coffee, and I felt really compelled to go into the shop, and they invited me to do a meditation, and you in a sort of lounger thing underneath a pyramid. And I was like, okay, and you listen to these sounds, and I thought, okay, but on this lounger type thing there was a giant Vesica Pisces on the chair.
Wow.
And I had literally just had this sign. So I was like, okay. And then I turned around and then there was this huge picture of Archangel Michael on the wall. And I was like, okay. So I did this like really powerful meditation. And I was like, this is nuts. And I went and met the girl for coffee, and that was pretty serendipitous and magical. And then from there I walked around the corner to back to the chalice well, and the grate on top of, I think I said this in our little my message to you, the grate on top of the chalice well is a Vesica Pisces. And I was just, maybe it'd been there all the time. I think that was my second visit to the chalice well, but I was like, what is happening? Why are there suddenly all of these Vesica Pisces? And I had to obviously go and do some research because I didn't know what it was. And yeah, so finding out about the traditional one that I didn't know until just 2 minutes ago, that was a false teaching, was this masculine, feminine, and the overlap and all this kind of stuff about the sacred, sacred sexuality and the combining of heaven and earth. And I was like, what is going on? I don't even know. So yeah, I feel like I need to go and do more research on that and really find out more, because you've just blown my mind. So telling me that there's more to it.
What's cool is that it is the divine masculine, divine feminine, right? Obviously. But what's been missing is the other piece that now is probably the next evolution iteration, right? So it's not that it's not been of benefit. However, now we have to integrate all parts, not just one, just two, right? So the third piece as well. So that's the main thing. Yeah. So, but what's
Hang
so
on,
cool
I lost you
is
for a
that
second.
we're all being guided to the same outcome, it feels like, right? And that is the integration of all of it. And part of what our work here is to do is to help integrate, at least for me, it's integrate that within myself, right? The divine masculine, divine feminine within myself, right? All of it. And then in that way, I'm able to then teach it in a way that will resonate at a different level, right? And so it feels like that's part of your journey as well, to be teaching that. So
yeah,
which is why you're getting those signs of like, hello, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So cool.
Hello, talk about investigate this Vesica Pisces more. And I haven't really looked into it since I was in Glastonbury, really. So that's maybe 5 years. I sort of listened to the guy and then forgot all about it for a while. So I'm so glad, but I have done a lot of work on both of those sides of me. Hang on, I've lost you a second. I don't know if you're still there.
I'm here.
Yeah, oh, you are. Okay. So yeah, that just absolutely fascinates me. So if somebody was new to this work, perhaps, and even the sort of talking about the divine masculine and feminine is a bit of a new concept to them, because it was for me 5-6 years ago. How would you sum up that, what that might look like, or the journey to integrate them, like for if somebody was sort of new and kind of wondering what this is all about?
Sure. So I always try to teach from my own personal experience first, because that seems to be the easiest. And also it's the clearest example that I have. And this might resonate with you as well, since you had a big corporate job. And, for me, I was the boss of all the things, right? I had a lot of direct reports, like 200 people in my direct organization that I was responsible for, reported to the CEO. And I had to be in my masculine pretty much all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the time. And in order to hold that and to be able to execute at that level for that period of time, I functioned mostly in the masculine energy.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened then was, so I had been married before, and then divorced when I was 30. It took me like 20 years to sign up again. But in that time, I had a few relationships. And what I found was women that are powerful women that are getting things done and high achievers, right, tend to be in their masculine energy and tend to either be unhappy or not in a good, healthy, loving relationship with a masculine man. This is obviously for that polarity. It doesn't have to be man. You get it. The polarity, male, female, masculine, feminine, not necessarily male, female, but you know what I'm saying. So for me, I wanted to be in a relationship with a very, strong man, masculine man, but I was in my masculine. So I kept the polarity I kept messing it up, if that makes sense. Right.
Absolutely.
There's a very
two batteries. If you get the plus sides of two batteries, they just don't work.
Exactly. It repels each other.
Yeah.
So in a lot of my work with women that are visionary leaders, that are really making big moves and doing big things, the work is to integrate back into the fullest expression of both, because we all are both.
Absolutely.
However, I want to function in my feminine energy as much as I possibly can, so that I'm in harmony with my masculine beloved partner, right? Yeah. Otherwise, we create chaos, we create heartache and suffering, because we're constantly trying to be the boss of everything, right? If we're not integrated in our feminine. That to me is one of the easiest examples of why it's important. If you are struggling in a relationship, it's probably a masculine feminine energetics issue for the most part. And when we can learn to surrender and trust, and I tell a story all the time about why I think my relationship right now is what it is, and so beautiful and so loving. And it's about riding on the back of a motorcycle. And here's another really good example, because when you are high achieving, rock star status, getting things done, always in control, you're always the boss, boom, 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 right? You get what I mean? This probably resonate with your listeners. My husband drives a motorcycle, and I grew up always being afraid of motorcycles and never really rode them. And when I realized, okay, I'm going to have to get on the back of this bike and I'm going to be happy about it, that was a major, first, a mindset shift. But what was very interesting is that there are certain places in our lives where we are not in control and we are not the boss. And one of them is on the back of a motorcycle. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not in control, and you have to completely trust and surrender and relax your energy to be able to be a good passenger on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how many times driving around town and through the hills of Tuscany and all these beautiful places, thinking, I get to choose right now. Am I going to be stiff and scared and controlling, or I'm going to take a deep exhale and I'm going to trust and surrender and relax into this experience and let him take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
I trust him enough right now to receive the ability to just relax and enjoy this. And I'm telling you, I think that's what I was finally like, oh my gosh, I can marry you. I can marry you because I trust you enough to ride on this motorcycle and I'm happy and I'm free. And I felt more alive and more in my feminine than probably anywhere else in my life. It sounds crazy, but I'm like, life on the back of a motorcycle. That's it. That's it. That's for me the epitome of being in my feminine is just relaxing and letting him guide and trust that he's got me.
Oh, I absolutely love that analogy. Like, and it couldn't speak to me more than my experience. Some of the most terrifying moments of my life have been on the back of more of a moped scooter type thing, and also some of the most empowering. So it definitely depends who's driving.
Depends who's driving.
You gotta trust driving, and it's also about trusting yourself and that decision also to get on the bag.
Yep.
And then can you relax? And it's I had a really beautiful encounter actually with a Floridian. How do you say man from Florence? Is that how I would say it? Yeah, I was there for a few weeks and maybe a month. And I had a really
Florentine is what you call them.
There we go. That's much better. Yeah, with a Florentine. And he would drive me around Florence on the back of his Vespa and take me for pizza and beer and Negronis and things like that. And I just thought it was wonderful. And but
what happened?
Not a lot. I don't know. We didn't last, but it was fun for the few weeks I was there. But yeah, the contrast to sort of being like, oh, he knows where he is, he knows the streets, he's ridden this bike since he was a child probably, compared to it was my friend's ex-boyfriend that had a really scary situation on, and he thought it'd be hilarious to sort of come in almost at a horizontal angle around a corner, and I just about lost my kneecaps. And so the difference of like those two experiences was really quite vast. But yeah, I totally love that analogy. I totally love it. You
can almost feel it in your body. You can feel the difference when I speak about because I was always afraid, so I was very contracted. So what happens a lot of times too, when women are in their masculine, there's a lot of contraction. There's a lot of hardness, if you will, right? Versus relaxation and softness, And it's a practice. I mean, it is a practice. Yeah. That every day you really have to check in and think, how can I honor him? How can I honor them in their masculine? How can I be in my feminine? How can I respond in a way? But then once you like a muscle, right? And once you do it for long enough and you get the vibe, you're like, oh, now we're in just such a good little vibe that I do notice if I come out of it and I want to like be bossy or tell him what to do. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
And I can catch it. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't feel good. And it's not going to feel good to him. So why would I speak that way? Why would I respond that way? So it is an unlearning and then a relearning, if you will.
Absolutely. And I love also, just going back to the motorbike thing, the more relaxed you are as a passenger, the safer it is. Right?
Yeah. And that's what he said. If you can just roll with me, just go with me, babe. He's like, I've got you. Here's the other thing he kept saying. He's like, I've got you. I've got you. I've got you. Don't worry. I've got you. And I think so many times as women, especially when you're single, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of everything, right? Much like single moms, right? If we have any listeners here that are single moms, oh my gosh, you've got to do all that and 9 million other things, right? So there's this element of being cared for and being taken care of. And the words "I've got you" really were like a deep exhale for me, because I believed that. And I was like, wow, you really do. You really, really do. Truly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, one of the greatest gifts that the masculine can give to the feminine, and that the feminine can receive if we allow ourselves to receive it.
Yeah.
Again, we have to allow ourselves to receive it, because again, I could be like, well, no, you don't. What if you don't? What if I still need to be the boss? What if I still have to take care of myself? What
Yeah.
if you mess it up? Right?
Oh, for
So
sure.
there's a dynamic there that has to be, it's a lovely little dance, because they have to offer it, they have to receive it, truly receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were able to fully surrender. It's really cool when you have the opportunity to experience that. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like
It's a beautiful thing.
still waiting. But also there's part of me that still wants to ride my own goddamn moped. I still want to be in control of that bike.
You can always do that too, you know?
Yeah.
You can always do that too.
It's
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe
For me, it's just that motorcycle example is just, I had never seen such a clear, like, oh wow, this is such a clear observation I'm having right now, right? Of how I can respond, how he's responding. So just, I think it describes exactly what we're trying to explain so well. But yeah, get your own damn bike if you want. It's okay.
No, I mean, I'm kind of kidding. I used to have one. I drove a moped for, I don't know, 6-7 years or something. And
What?
yeah, so I definitely prefer, I enjoyed it then, but I think but also when I hung up my helmet for the last time, I wasn't upset about that either. You know, I was like, okay, I think this part of my life is complete. And yeah, I think a car is in my future.
Go. I love it. Yeah, now we're on the island and I'm like, I think we're going to just continue to ride this motorcycle. Maybe we get a car, I don't know, but man, it sure is fun to dip around these island roads, you know, so.
It's so convenient, and especially in the weather, and you know, it's so much easier. And the parking, and yeah, I did love it for a while, but yeah, I was sort of glad. I had a couple of little scrapes as well, even when I was in control. So that was usually when I was trying to do too much. I had like, you know, my 2 bags of shopping and my gym bag, and like, I think I had like, oh gosh, like a mop or a Hoover or something. And I managed to get my, my steering locked and fell over in the middle of traffic on a Friday afternoon, which was disaster. But anyway, I'm kind of glad to let that part go for now. But yeah, I might have to sit with that one. I'm gonna have to sit with that analogy, like really feel into it, because I think I was so sort of connected to the journey of, you know, you have to also heal the masculine to heal your feminine within yourself when you're integrating, which I always thought was so upside down, because you need to be able to, I guess, like what I was saying, the first time I was on the back of a motorcycle with somebody, I didn't trust the masculine, right? So I was terrified on the back. He took risks that I don't think he should have. I got home okay, which was fine, but you know, I was like, I will never get on a back again of somebody, you know, like that. He was a bit of an idiot. So, so but it's the beautiful thing is that you obviously trust your husband, so you have that experience, and it's the working through and the trusting of the masculine, and the it makes a big difference. And so healing my own masculine within myself, and allowing it to sort of stand down as well for a second, and then allowing the feminine part as well to be healed within myself, and then within relationships. And when I look back on different relationships, I could see I remember the first time I got this teaching, it was actually in a Tony Robbins seminar, many years ago, maybe 2015, I think. And I was like, oh, I actually, do you know, I had a feminine coach mentor who had been in her program for a year, and she taught all about the divine feminine. I didn't understand it. until a man, Tony Robbins, explained it to me. Isn't that wild? Like, I've been listening to her and I'm like, yep, yep, yep. But I didn't get the dance between the two until he explained it, which is ironic and kind of sad. But I didn't fully get that feminine piece in the part that I had been playing in my own relationships, and where they had all kind of been going wrong. So, or the type of man I would attract. I'm like, they always kind of looked masculine, but they didn't own their own masculinity. So they were quite sort of more weak men, I guess. I guess the word would be maybe not true to their word, maybe not like really steadfast.
Solid.
Yeah, so they would maybe look the part, but then the dynamic still, I would still be in my masculine because I wasn't allowing them to be in their masculine, or that's what had attracted us in the first place, because they could sense that, whatever. So there was the polarity, but it was the wrong way, right? It's like, this is not going to work for me long term. And so, recognizing that part within myself and realizing I couldn't attract this masculine man if I was in the driving seat. So it's so hard, I think. I don't want to call it hard because that's, not great language, but for, like you said, that single mom or the single person who has to do everything, like, you have to know how to change a light bulb, right? You have to be able to catch a spider if you live on your own, right? Like, because there's nobody coming to fix that, right? Like, and yeah, so there's an element of like, yes, I can do it all myself. I can figure that out, but even though I can, I don't want to, or I don't have to, and I'm gonna allow somebody else to take that part, even if I could catch the spider on my own.
Well, yes, you could do it, and I think what we miss sometimes as feminine beings, right? We miss the fact that the masculine loves nothing more than to serve us. Not serve, but like protect and care for and nourish in a way for us, right? So, my husband loves when I need him to do something, because it makes him feel like, okay, good. You're doing your thing. I've got my thing to do. I can do this. Da, da, da. Yeah, I could probably build a fire if I really figured out from like being a Girl Scout, but I don't really want to. And he loves doing that for me because he knows it makes me happy.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times as women, we steal the joy from the men in our lives because we do everything on our own.
Yeah.
We steal the blessing of them being able to care for us and take care of us, because it truly does make them happy, just like it makes us happy to do things for them, right? When you care for the ones you love, you want to serve each other. You want to give each other what the other one needs. And if we do it both from a place of overflow, so this is not self-sacrifice, this is not, woe is me, I've got to do all this stuff. It's, I'm taking such exquisite care of myself, and I love you so much that it just is this lovely flow. It's a lovely flow. I ask you for what I need, and you ask me for what you need. And if I can do it, great. If I can't, I'll be honest and tell you that, right? That's the other thing, is just being clear. Being clear in communication and just being honest is half the game. But then asking for what we need and desire even. And I think back to the next level, what do you desire? You know what? Honey, it would be amazing if you could make something really fabulous for dinner. My husband's a chef. So if I want something, I just ask him, and he's like, what do you want? What do you want for your dinner, honey? And he makes it. I'm like, this is the best, We have this saying in French, it's avec plaisir, right? With pleasure. It's like, with pleasure, honey. I'll make it with pleasure. And I'm like, this is amazing. But I also pour into his heart. I pour into him. Thank you so much, honey. I appreciate you so much. So I try to really show and express my appreciation when he does something that makes me so happy. And then it just is this lovely little cycle, So that's where, when women are in their feminine deeply, and they feel deeply loved and they feel deeply honored. Now, this is not about when you're not feeling those things. That's a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
But when you feel loved and honored and respected, you feel free to ask for what you need and desire. And then they feel the same way. And you just create this beautiful experience, it's really lovely. So we're going to find your situation. I feel it coming. 2024.
I have hope. I will never lose that. But yeah, it's coming. I think I need to be in a place. I mean, who knows? You were on the road, and like, I don't want to put any parameters around the magic happening. But yeah, there's something about being in one place or grounded, or because I'm sort of still on the road, still living out of a suitcase. I could really do with my own wardrobe again. So I love that. So I feel like it's a beautiful space to sort of end this, but I would love you to tell us what you're excited about, what you have coming up, where are your next beautiful retreats, and yeah, what can people, where can they best find you, and what have you got going on?
So we did just make a move to Sardinia. Again, another magic carpet ride moment. So I am putting together some really beautiful opportunities for people to sparkle with us here on the island. And it's a blue zone. So if anyone has watched Blue Zones on Netflix, it's becoming more popular. People are like, oh, I know Sardinia, it's a blue zone. So there are going to be a few beautiful opportunities to sparkle here. We have our service and sparkle experience in Morocco in February. So that's the next, right away. And we'll do sparkle experience probably here in June of this year. So, and I'm also going to do a really cool event. It's called the Sacred Convergence. Mm-hmm. This might be something you might want to come to too, darling. Just 3 days of a coming together. Sacred Convergence is, again, the coming together of like-minded, big-hearted, visionary dreamers, right? Those that are called to this kind of conversation, this kind of work. And so I would love to invite everyone to come for that as well. And I can put the link, I can share the link with you.
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Want to share that, folks. I don't know when this is going to be live, but I can make sure I get it to you before.
Actually going to be pretty swift. So I'm getting my act together. It's going to happen maybe tomorrow.
Quick. Oh gosh. Okay. Oh wow. Well, yeah, so I'll have to share that on social media today, so that way they won't be like, "What?"
I think I stumbled across that page while on your website. So if you can't get it to me, I will try and find it again.
Yep,
and yeah, it sounded wonderful experience, and yeah, I might just make it. That would be amazing.
Can I tell you one other magical story? You'll love this.
Please, yes.
So I have a shaman in Peru and a guide, for Machu Picchu. Her name's Vilma. I've done a few events there and gone to Machu Picchu with her. She's amazing. And then this year, we were going to try to coordinate her to come and host an event at the villa, but the timing didn't align and so on and so forth. And so her friend reached out that's doing the organizing and says, hey, we're going to be back in 2024. We'd love to do Florence. And I said, well, we would have loved to have had you in Florence, but we actually just moved. So that's not going to work, but keep me posted where you're going to be. He's like, oh, okay. Well, I know for sure we're going to be in Abruzzo and then we're going to be in Sardinia for this longer thing. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm sorry, what? He said, we just, he's like, oh, really? Well, yeah, there's tons of magic portals and things and fairies and all this kind of stuff there and all these places that we want to go to. So we're going to be in Sardinia. Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
Because I didn't know why I was being called here. I had no idea, but I just knew it was La Maddalena Island, Mary Magdalene Island. Ooh. So we went there.
More chills.
And then, yep. And then I was like, I think I'm supposed to be there. And it made no sense because we had the villa thing. And I was like, but we're supposed to go. So my husband's like, all right, let's get packing and we'll figure it out. It always does, So within 2 weeks, everything shifted. And now we're here 2 months later.
Wow, that's fantastic. And of course, I've spent some time in the Sacred Valley and Machu Picchu and done a lot of ceremony there. And a couple of years ago, actually, I was in Greece at a mystery school, and we actually had some of the shamans from Peru came over to Greece, and we did some really deep ceremony work with them in Greece. And so even though they're so, I don't know, obviously indigenous to their land, and they do this beautiful, beautiful work there, even the shamans from Peru, they're turning up in their traditional dress, and they're beautiful, just the most gorgeous, gorgeous people, and they're even being drawn, I love it, to Sardinia, to Greece, to these portals. They're doing this work, even though it might seem a bit, I don't know why it seems stranger for them to be traveling, but there's a sort of, I don't know, there's just something, they're from these remote locations in the jungle, in the valleys, and yet they're out doing this work as well. And we had some really quite profound shifts and moments with them in Greece. So I love that they're on the move. I love that they're doing that. They're bringing their peace and their magic and bringing it to us, so that is just so wonderful.
So beautiful. Well, I would love to, yes, connect with you in real life. And obviously, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out. I'm really easy to get on Facebook, is the best.
Yeah.
And or email. You can email me if they want to reach me with questions or anything. So sounds good. Thank you so much. SoulSparkleLiving.com.
Yeah. Yep. And I will pop your website in the link, and also the link to the conversions. And if anything else you've got going on, I will stick it in there as well. Thank you so much. I know I was just laughing because my lovely friend who I did my first interview was months ago. And then she's like, when's this going live? I'm like, I don't know. But it's taken me a little while, and like now I'm like, everything is going live tomorrow. So this is the perfect timing. So hopefully I'll be able to get this up, and well, it'll be going up in the next day or two anyway. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I really hope I meet you one day in person. And
I feel like you will, for sure.
I feel like I will. Thanks.
That'd be lovely.
I really appreciate it.
Janine. Thank you.
We'll entice her back. We'll get her back.
Okay.
All right. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We really appreciate all of your support, whether it is subscribing, reviewing, sharing, or just downloading this podcast. It makes such a difference, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.